Current leadership research describes charisma as a very high perceived warmth combined with a very high perceived expertness. And as a facilitator, you don't need to be naturally extroverted, have a great sense of humor, or be very good looking. There are 9 specific tips that I'm going to share with you today, how you can charm your audience and have fun while doing it. The first tip is the 5-second authority start. You set the tone immediately and you want to aim at high perceived expertness. As a facilitator, what's your expertise? The method. The first moments will decide how the group will react to you. It is more important to be clear at the start than to be friendly. You can add warmth later, but unless you establish structure, which is your expertise as a facilitator, the group will not trust the process. What you're gonna do is you stand in the middle, in the front, and before speaking, you take a break. You don't fidget, you don't rush, you don't fix anything. The technique is already working. You make contact with 2 or 3 people and then you start explaining what's going to happen. For example, you stand in front of them and you say, we'll use the next 90 minutes to get to a decision on topic A. I'll guide you through the steps to get there. This immediately signals that you know what you're doing, and the group puts you in charge of the process, not the content. The second thing you can do to increase your perceived charisma is to switch the energy. You don't need to be always enthusiastic. Some facilitators try to stay high energy the whole time, and it actually kills attention because it's exhausting. Try running a marathon at a sprint speed. So this is what you want to do instead. So when you're giving instructions, you slow down, you give lower energy, and that automatically brings people to focus on the topic. When making transitions, you may become more active, more enthusiastic, move a bit more, and that will give people momentum and energy back. It is important to take pauses before making your key point. These are some of the attention management mechanics that we've already spoken about in this other video. The main key here is people notice change, not intensity. To do a little exercise, you may want to take the same piece of content and imagine you're an operator in the tower giving instructions to a pilot. Have you ever heard those videos? They're so cool, so calm. And then imagine that you're trying to excite a golden retriever. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do that, by the way. But same piece of content to completely different levels of calm and cool. The next one is called the spotlight effect. This helps you make people feel seen very quickly. If I have an antagonistic or very hyperactive participant in my workshop, what I like to focus on is to actually listen to them and see where they're coming from. And once they feel accepted and seen and heard, they often turn into a more constructive, more collaborative way of interacting with me and my content. And they often become sort of champions of the methods that I'm facilitating. So here are some hands-on ways to do that. Turn your body physically to the person who is speaking. Use names naturally. I like to write down the names on a sheet of paper in order that the people are sitting, so that I can match the seat to the person and keep it somewhere on my table, so that it's easier for me to remember the participants' names if I don't know them personally yet. Another way to draw the spotlight to a contribution or a rather quiet participant is to repeat or reframe something that they have already said, but from the position of a facilitator. So you hear a participant in the back saying something, and you may want to draw attention to that by saying something like, Anna, did I understand you correctly that the issue is not in the feature, it's in the adoption? There is a fun little group dynamic effect. It's called the IKEA effect. People value things that they contributed to higher than the ones that were just given to them. So like putting together an IKEA table feels different than just getting a ready one off of a marketplace. Here comes the tricky part: clean interruptions. At the beginning of my facilitation career, I kind of avoided asking people open questions because I could never control whether they're going to go on for minutes or just give me a yes or no answer. I can't just ask them to get to the point, right? Well, there are ways of politely redirecting the conversation and the attention flow. Next time you are in a situation when you need to interrupt a long monologue from a participant, use the following pattern: acknowledge, interrupt, redirect. For example, that's a good point. Acknowledgement. I'm going to pause you there so that we don't go too deep yet. Interruption. Let's capture it and come back after we've mapped the options. Redirection. Another one. I'm going to hit pause on you there before we accidentally solve a different problem. I really like this one because it's a sort of a hidden compliment. Another very nice one is, let's hold that thought. It deserves more time than we have right now. These work because they maintain flow without interrupting it. The acknowledge, interrupt, redirect frame works because it doesn't create friction, but it keeps the flow moving. And as a facilitator, you signal authority and respect. The next one is particularly important for those of you facilitating more creative, unconventional, and playful methods. It's called precision framing. Before every activity, answer these 3 silent questions everyone has in their heads. Why this? Why now? What am I supposed to do? This reduces resistance to methods and supports sort of compliance. And it is very important with more creative methods that may look random or unserious to people that are not familiar with them. An example that you may want to use is, before we jump into solutions, we will try to collect as many options as possible, because the first several ideas are often the more obvious ones. You will each now write down 8 ideas. This looks deliberate and not just method-driven for the sake of doing a fun little exercise. The next one is strategic vulnerability. This is to be exercised with caution, and it is important to share something only if it helps increase your authority or relatability in the context. So instead of sharing a random personal anecdote like those cringy LinkedIn posts, you may want to go with I've seen teams, or I've seen a team, even better. I'm going to share something with you that I don't tell people often. My team skipped this step, and we actually wasted 8 weeks of time paying for skipping this step. Personal anecdote, not quite. Relatable story, you show some vulnerability, you show that you've learned from your past mistakes. This gives you warmth and expertness. This also humanizes you without feeling like you're oversharing, especially if you're coming from a position of power. If you're higher in the hierarchy than the participants here, this is something that you may want to try out. The next one is about not doing something. This is about using silence as a tool. Especially if you've been talking for a while, silence will feel awkward. A good rule of thumb is you wait with your pause until you are uncomfortable, and then 3 to 5 more seconds. You don't immediately come and rescue the group. You put some pressure on the people to participate, to engage, and to contribute. And this also signals confidence. You're not anxious about the outcome. There are some nice little saves that you may want to have up your sleeve. Something like, if you make the mistake of asking whether the group has questions, then wait, and then nothing happens. A good little come back from that is to say something like, oh, the question that is often asked at this point is, or you may want to do one of those, oh, not everyone at the same time. People giggle a little bit and the pressure in the room kind of resolves and somebody will speak up. Okay, you may want to invite the back of the room to ask the questions, and then somebody will feel the pressure, ask a question, and that will get the ball rolling. The next one is physical positioning. Your physical movement and the space that you take up and the way you move and the way you talk and where you stand in relation to your audience makes a huge impact. Some say 90% of the perceived information comes through the visual channels from your body language. Just think about how a stand-up comedian performs in front of their audience. They don't have a flip chart, they don't have a PowerPoint, hopefully, and they still manage to control the attention of the room. Do they move? Yes, they do. There is a chair, there is a microphone, there is a mic stand. This is all they have. So they put their body in the room, to the front, to the back, walk side to side. This is because physical positioning in the room matters, it controls the attention, and it translates anxiety or confidence, making a point or opening up the room for discussion. The first rule here is to stand next to the key visuals, not in front of them. You don't want to be competing with your whiteboard. So as a right-handed person, I like to stand to the right of my flip chart, of my screen, and kind of come in to the flip chart, close the space, and come back out. I also like to put my hand on my flip chart just to anchor the attention point. Move with purpose. For example, you're changing a topic, or even better, you're describing or introducing two different perspectives. Explain one when looking to the left, then walk over to the left and explain the second one, the opposing opinion, when looking to the right. This will put the people into the headspace where they consider two opposing opinions. And as you may know from the wonderful format of TED Talks, it is very important to anchor yourself as the focus of attention in the very front and center of your space and stage. Just as a journalist would, you put things into words that everyone has experienced during the workshop. If there were fights and ambiguities, acknowledge it, verbalize it, put it into perspective. This gives you control and authority of what happened. Why is this important? It locks in the perceived value. If the last impression that you made was controlled, was calm, was authoritative, this is how the people will remember you as a facilitator. So if there is one key takeaway that I want you to take from this conversation, it's you don't need to be more entertaining. You don't need to be more loud. If you want to be perceived as a charismatic facilitator, you need to be more intentional with your clarity, with where you're guiding your participants' attention, and have visible respect and interest in your participants. This gives you a high perceived warmth and a high perceived expertness. I'm Nina with the workshop method. Like, subscribe, and see you soon.